The invisible force, cattle attacks at Skinwalker Ranch, cattle surgically mutilated with precision instruments, no blood at the scene, and something that left no footprints in the Utah desert. Across the high desert of northeastern Utah, where the Uinta Basin stretches beneath endless sky, a ranch property becomes the site of systematic attacks that defy every conventional explanation. The year is 1994, and the Sherman family has just purchased what they believe will be their dream property. Within months, their cattle begin to perish under circumstances that veterinary science cannot adequately explain. The first incidents follow a pattern that will repeat with disturbing consistency over the next 2 years. A cow or calf is found dead in the pasture. The animal's body shows evidence of organ removal performed with surgical precision. The rectum has been cored out in a perfect circle. Reproductive organs have been extracted. Sometimes the eyes are gone. Sometimes the tongue has been removed through a cut in the jaw, so precise it appears to have been made with a medical scalpel. What disturbs Terry Sherman most profoundly is not the mutilation itself, but what surrounds it. There is no blood at the scene. The ground around the carcass shows no disturbance. No footprints approach the dead animal. No tire tracks mark the surrounding soil. No predator scat lies anywhere in the vicinity. The vegetation around the body remains undisturbed, as though the animal simply materialized in that spot, already deceased and already mutilated. Sherman walks circles around each carcass, searching for any sign of how something reached his cattle. He finds nothing. The attacks happen in open pasture where tracks should be obvious in the desert soil, yet the earth reveals no story. Whatever reaches these animals leaves no physical trace of its presence. The financial impact accumulates quickly. Cattle represent substantial investment for any ranching operation. Each loss diminishes the family's economic viability, but the psychological impact proves even more devastating. Sherman cannot protect his herd from a threat he cannot identify, cannot track, and cannot confront. The invisible nature of the attacks creates a pervasive sense of helplessness that permeates every aspect of ranch life. In one documented incident that will later be recorded by investigators, Sherman discovers a calf lying in the pasture. The animal's side shows a depression, an indentation in the flesh, whose shape suggests something enormous pressed against it. The depression's configuration is consistent with a very large hand, fingers splayed across the animal's ribs. Sherman examines the ground surrounding the calf. For 100 yards in every direction, the soil shows no tracks of any kind. Nothing approached this animal, nothing left the scene. Yet something touched it with enough force to leave an impression in its flesh. The pattern continues through 1994 and into 1995. The mutilations occur at irregular intervals, sometimes weeks apart, sometimes months. Each incident displays the same characteristics: surgical precision in the cuts, complete absence of blood, no evidence of any physical presence at the scene. Veterinary examination of the carcasses reveals details that deepen the mystery rather than resolve it. The cuts made to remove organs show precision consistent with surgical instruments. The edges are clean, not torn or ragged as they would be from predator activity. The organs are removed completely, not partially consumed. The lack of blood is absolute, not merely minimal. These are not scavenged carcasses. These are not predator attacks. These are not the work of coyotes, mountain lions, or any known wildlife in the region. Law enforcement is contacted multiple times. Officers arrive, examine the scenes, and find no evidence of human perpetrators. No tire tracks suggest vehicles approach the remote locations where some carcasses are discovered. No footprints indicate human presence. The locations are sometimes far from any road, across terrain that would require significant effort to traverse while carrying equipment sophisticated enough to perform surgical mutilations. The investigation takes a more systematic turn when the National Institute for Discovery Science begins its study of the ranch property. NIDS brings scientific methodology to phenomena that have previously been documented only through anecdotal reports. The team includes investigators with veterinary expertise who can conduct forensic analysis of the cattle deaths. Multiple carcasses undergo detailed veterinary examination during the NIDS monitoring period. The findings are consistent across specimens. The surgical precision of the organ removal is confirmed. The absence of blood is verified. The lack of conventional explanation for the mechanism is documented in formal reports. These are not casual observations by untrained witnesses. These are forensic findings by veterinary professionals examining physical evidence. The veterinary analysts note specific details that distinguish these mutilations from known phenomena. The cuts show characteristics inconsistent with standard veterinary or agricultural tools. The precision suggests instruments designed for surgery rather than butchering. The complete absence of blood indicates either that the animals were alive when the organs were removed, allowing the heart to pump blood away from the surgical sites, or that some unknown process extracted blood from the tissues post-mortem. Neither explanation provides comfort. If the animals were alive during organ removal, they experienced trauma beyond measure. If the blood was extracted after death, the mechanism for such extraction exists nowhere in conventional understanding. The positions in which the cattle are found add another layer of strangeness to the pattern. Dead animals typically collapse in ways consistent with how they perished. A cow that passes away from disease falls differently than one attacked by a predator. The Sherman Ranch cattle are sometimes found in positions that suggest they were placed rather than having fallen naturally. Bodies lie in the open with no sign of struggle in the surrounding soil. No drag marks indicate the animals were moved post-mortem. They simply appear where they are found, as though deposited there by some force that left no other trace. The NIDS team attempts to establish monitoring protocols that might capture evidence of whatever perpetrates these attacks. Cameras are positioned, observation schedules are maintained, yet the attacks continue to occur without being witnessed. The invisible force operates beyond the reach of the surveillance systems, beyond the scope of human observation. The financial losses accumulate to the point where the ranching operation becomes unsustainable. Each mutilated animal represents not only immediate economic loss, but also the erosion of the breeding program, the reduction of the herd's productive capacity. The Sherman family faces a choice between continuing to sustain losses they cannot prevent or abandoning the property they purchased as their future. The psychological toll exceeds the financial damage. The inability to protect the herd creates a fundamental violation of the rancher's relationship with the land and animals. Sherman's role as steward of his livestock becomes meaningless when faced with a threat he cannot counter. The sense of vulnerability extends beyond the cattle to the family itself. If something can reach the animals without leaving tracks, without being seen, what prevents it from approaching the house, from threatening the family directly? The cattle attacks do not cease when NIDS acquires the property. The pattern continues under the organization's ownership. The scientific monitoring documents incidents but does not prevent them. The phenomenon proves resistant to intervention, indifferent to observation, and impervious to conventional security measures. The mechanism of the attacks remains unexplained despite years of investigation and forensic analysis. No theory adequately accounts for all the documented characteristics. Predators leave tracks and consume flesh messily. Human perpetrators require access and leave evidence of their presence. Natural decomposition does not produce surgical precision or selective organ removal. The cattle mutilation phenomenon, documented at Skinwalker Ranch, exists within a broader pattern reported across the American West for decades. Ranchers from Montana to New Mexico have reported similar incidents. Cattle found with organs removed with surgical precision, no blood at the scenes, no tracks approaching or leaving the carcasses. The consistency of reports across vast geographic distances and long time periods suggests a phenomenon that transcends local explanation. What distinguishes the Skinwalker Ranch cases from the broader pattern is the quality of documentation. Rather than ranchers reporting to local newspapers, these incidents were examined by a scientific team using forensic methodology. Veterinary professionals conducted formal analyses. Investigators with scientific credentials documented findings in structured reports. The NIDS investigation brought empirical rigor to phenomena that mainstream science had consistently dismissed as folklore or misidentification. The legacy of the cattle attacks at Skinwalker Ranch extends beyond the specific incidents. The documentation demonstrates that some reported phenomena, however strange, can withstand scientific scrutiny. The cases challenge the assumption that unconventional reports necessarily lack empirical foundation. The veterinary analyses provide physical evidence that resists conventional explanation, regardless of how uncomfortable that resistance makes the scientific establishment. The invisible force that attacked the Sherman cattle has never been identified. The mechanism remains unknown. The purpose, if any exists, cannot be determined from the evidence. What remains is documentation of events that occurred, physical evidence that was examined, and the absence of any adequate conventional explanation for what transpired on that Utah ranch between 1994 and 1996. If you found this case compelling, subscribe to Vanishing Roads for more documented paranormal investigations from around the world. This story was created with AI assistance based on documented case files. All events reference real investigations and reported incidents.